I'm going to go through every major signing and talk about the winners of that situation. Starting off in Atlanta, it's hard to argue that anybody won free agency more than Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. Now, Kirk Cousins going to the Atlanta Falcons, getting $100 million guaranteed at this point, 36 years old, coming off a torn Achilles, may or may not be a good thing for the Atlanta Falcons. They may or may not now have a shot to win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to be diving into that. You can think whatever the hell you want to think on that front. But from a fantasy football perspective, it could not be better than this. This is exactly what we were talking about the Atlanta Falcons needing. We didn't want Justin Fields. You wanted the quarterback that was going to stand in the pocket and give you a zillion passing yards. What we decided to do is look at what Cousins did in Minnesota, compare that to what you had this past year in the NFL, and just get a baseline expectation of what Kirk Cousins has done really over the past 6 years. And over the past 6 years, Kirk Cousins has averaged 264 passing yards per game. He has averaged about 1.94 touchdowns per game and 7.9 adjusted yards per pass attempt. If you look at where this would have ranked him last year, this is his average over the past 6 seasons, right? This isn't a fluke. No, this is what he does every year. 6th passing yards, 5th with his touchdown rate, 6th with his adjusted yards per pass attempt. Kirk Cousins essentially elevates whatever offense he is in to be a top 5 offense in the league if you are looking at their passing volume, and he does it consistently. Now, there are a couple different things with this. One, should we immediately pencil in the Atlanta Falcons to be a top 5 team in the NFL in passing yards this next season? Probably not. Kirk Cousins is coming off a pretty serious injury. Kirk Cousins is 36 years old, and Kirk Cousins in Minnesota had a phenomenal situation with, at one point, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, and then another point, Justin Jefferson. So while Kirk Cousins has been a borderline top 5 NFL passer every single year over the past 6, based off how good his situation was in Minnesota, based off his age and injury, I do not think we can just pencil him in to be that top 5 option, but he should still be damn close to top 10. I think we can say this is a top 10 passing offense at the minimum. And we go through and compare this to what you've had in recent history for the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta 2 years ago averaged 158 passing yards per game. The only team worse was the Chicago Bears at 130, and the Bears were the worst the NFL saw that entire decade, so I don't really think you can compare them to them. The Atlanta Falcons are a bottom 3 passing offense from like the year 2011 to 2022, if you look at their 2022 season. Going to 2023, they averaged 207 passing yards. The only teams that were worse, Carolina, the Giants, the Jets, the Titans, the Patriots, the Bears, the Cardinals, Steelers, Broncos, Raiders. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 of those teams will not have their starting quarterback this next year because the man's getting benched, right? So if you're looking at this, the Atlanta Falcons offense has been a train wreck. You get rid of Arthur Smith. You insert in a quarterback that'll be top 10 in the NFL in passing volume with the upside for top 5. Wheels up for Kyle Pitts. Wheels up for Drake London. Wheels up for Bijan Robinson. I wasn't even about the Drake London price literally just last week as I was looking at his price going, okay, it looks like everybody's penciling in that Cousins is for sure there. And if he is, hell yeah, sign me up. Drake London's a top, say, 15 wide receiver in Dynasty easily. That's where we're at now. If you remember Drake London, this is a wide receiver that is a freshman at USC, broke out when Michael Pittman Jr. was a senior on that same roster, when Amon-Ra St. Brown was a sophomore. Then Drake London's sophomore season, he is more productive on that same roster than Amon-Ra St. Brown was as a junior. Then Amon-Ra St. Brown goes to Detroit, and Drake London's left by himself his junior season, and the man accounts for almost 45% of the passing offense at USC. Drake London was a phenomenal prospect. We don't even have to dive into Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was the best tight end prospect of all time, better than Bowers was. Kyle Pitts is a full year younger than Tank Dell. He's younger than Zay Flowers. Am I drafting Kyle Pitts as a top 5 tight end? Probably not. Of course not. But this is the situation. It's do or die for London. It's do or die for Pitts. This is probably the largest change in offensive environment that we are going to see from 2022 to 2023. Now, the next signing we have to talk about is going to be Squan Barkley. The winner of this, I don't think there is one from a fantasy football perspective. Now, for Squan Barkley personally, massive winner. I mean, the man to get $26 million guaranteed after what he fought for last year. I think that makes him a very happy individual. And obviously, it makes this Philadelphia Eagles offense very exciting. With that being said, if you are looking at Squan Barkley, running back going into his age 27 season, if you look at his age 26 year in the RotoViz screener, running backs that posted similar type years were Sean Alexander, Fred Taylor, Deuce McAllister, Clinton Portis, Dalvin Cook, Chris Johnson, Willis McGahee, Michael Pittman, D'Angelo Williams, and those were at 26 years old. Sean Alexander has stayed about neutral, went from 20.5 points per game to 20.5 points per game. Fred Jackson, 17.9 points per game to 17.8, so they stayed about the same. Deuce McAllister declined from 19.2 to 16. Clinton Portis declined from 20 to 15.8. Dalvin Cook declined from 19.5 down to 15.1. Chris Johnson from 16.5 down to 13.5. Willis McGahee from 19.5 down to 11.5. Michael Pittman from 16 to 11.5. And D'Angelo Williams from 16.5 to about 10. So the majority of the time, if you're looking at a running back like Squan Barkley, and you are comping his season last year to what he's going to do as a 27-year-old, we should expect a natural decline given what we have seen historically from the running back position. Now, with that being said, obviously the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is much better than what you had for the Giants. This is a much better offense as well. So I think Barkley can be better than he was last year. However, the issue that you may have with Squan Barkley is given the fact that you have Jalen Hurts in this offense, Hurts may vulture the rushing touchdowns at the goal line, while at the same time, Jalen Hurts may end up just taking away some of those targets that you would naturally expect from Squan Barkley, given the quarterbacks that can run the ball don't have to check the ball down as often as usual. So I'm not going to sit here act like it's a massive win for Squan Barkley from a fantasy perspective. I'm going to be thinking long and hard about our rankings, and obviously I will get y'all these updated when it's all said and done. Say, give me 2 days, March 12th or March 13th. I'll have my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings updated for y'all on the site. And of course, if you want to check out all my rankings, flockfantasy.com, not only can find all my rankings, but all the rankings for all your favorite creators, plus our Dynasty Trade Calculator, Dynasty Trade Finder, find draft guides for this year's rookie class. And if you sign up with promo code FLOCK, yours truly will break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in a podcast, and you'll get 30% off any sub. But let's move over to our next signing. This is going to be Gabriel Davis going to the Jacksonville Jaguars on a 3-year, $39 million deal. I know this sounds weird, and hear me out. I think the winner of this is Trevor Lawrence, Gabriel Davis, and Christian Kirk. Now, y'all know back in the day, I was a big-time Gabe Davis hater. You go back 2 years ago, it's going like round 3 of underdog drafts. The hype was insane. But if you take a step back and you look at what kind of wide receiver Gabe Davis is, this is a vertical field stretching option. This is a wide receiver that is a deep threat in his offense that is not necessarily going to be great in fantasy football himself, but from a real life perspective, he can be a viable wide receiver if he stretches NFL defenses, he gives space underneath to the other options, and makes quarterback play more efficient overall. I think that Gabe Davis is a good real life wide receiver, while maybe not necessarily a great fantasy wide receiver. Now, I'm calling him a winner here because we already knew he was gone from Buffalo. You go over, see where his underdog ADP is, see where his community ranking is on flockfantasy.com. Everybody and their mom already knew, yeah, he was no longer a Buffalo Bill. So if we ignore the situation in Buffalo, which is better than what it was in Jacksonville, but you look at the rest of the league, I would make the argument that Jacksonville is a natural fit with good quarterback play, and he steps into a role that's left behind from Calvin Ridley, and I think it makes a ton of sense. So I think he's a slight winner. I don't want to come out here and act like he's a top 24 wide receiver. Never was, maybe never will be. But I mean, if you're going to be fair to Gabe Davis, he was just 24 years old, right? So if we put in what he did at 24 years old, compare this to wide receivers since the year 2000, Christian Kirk, Hunter Renfrow, J.J. Nelson, Kenny Stills, Ruben Randall, Terrence Williams, Golden Tate, Austin Collie, Jerry Porter had similar seasons. If you were looking at the expected range of outcomes, it is wide. Austin Collie ended up putting 19 points per game on the board the year after. But, I mean, you are expecting Gabe Davis, based off this historical data, to pretty much profiles that like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in fantasy. Now, going over to Tony Pollard and the Tennessee Titans. Of course, I'm going to talk about the losers. I'll talk about Tyjae Spears in the video tomorrow. Remember when I said to sell Spears. But nonetheless, if you are looking at Pollard, I think you have to claim that he's a winner here. I had no idea if he was going to find a starting job. I'm not saying Tennessee's a better situation than Dallas. Of course, it's not. But, I mean, I was looking at Tony Pollard saying, okay, well, maybe goes to a situation if a team doesn't really like him, where he's a handcuffed running back that's going to see a few looks. Maybe he finds himself in like San Fran. I don't know. I don't know if any NFL team's going to want to pay him after what he did this past season. I mean, ultimately, this is a running back going into his age 27 year. We've seen how the NFL's treated these running backs in the past. But no, a team's willing to pay him the money to be a starter. The Tennessee Titans have way more invested into Tony Pollard now than they ever had with Tyjae Spears. Plus the fact that this coaching staff has no allegiance to Spears, and the allegiance lies with Pollard, clearly. And so I think you have to say that Pollard projects out to have a pretty large role this next year. I think what probably is going to happen is you're going to have a committee between Pollard and Spears. If I had to bet on one of the guys, I mean, for this next season, I'm going to go Pollard over Spears. I think they're both going to be involved. If we plug in what Pollard just did this past year at 26 years old, the other guys that he comps to historically, Zach Moss had a similar type season from a points per game perspective. CJ Anderson, Lamar Miller, Sean Green, Marion Barber, Jerome Harrison, Nick Goings, a name I can't even pronounce, and Stacey Mack. So, I mean, if you're looking at this, the expected range of outcomes is about 12.5 points per game at the very best for Pollard, and single digits points per game if you're looking at the median projection. So I don't want to come out here and act like, oh, Pollard's great, great, great. I'd probably imagine it Pollard like the lead back here getting about 60% of the work. Spears probably seeing about 40%. Maybe neither of them are going to be startable, but I think Pollard's probably a winner, just given the fact I didn't even know if he was going to have a starting job at all. Now, going over to our next guy, I'd say DeAndre Swift, kind of a similar story, right? Yeah, I think DeAndre Swift has to be a winner because I didn't know if he was going to be a starter this next year. And you look at the fact that this man gets $15.3 million guaranteed. DeAndre Swift is the starting running back for the Chicago Bears. DeAndre Swift is 2 years younger than Pollard as well. I definitely think I'd rather have Swift over Pollard at this point. And if you look at what DeAndre Swift did this past season, I mean, he comps to Jonathan Taylor this past year, Najee in 2022, Philip Lindsay in 2018, Jay Ajayi in 2017, Marion Barber, Ronnie Brown, Chris Brown, Thomas Jones. If you're looking at the expected range of outcomes here, you're looking at about like 11, 12 points per game for DeAndre Swift on the average this next season. Pretty good situation. Caleb Williams at quarterback. This is a team that has obviously a ton of resources. They have the 9th overall pick as well. I think this is going to be probably the best we've seen the Chicago Bears offense. Definitely better than any point that we saw during the Fields era. Probably better than any point than we saw during the Trubisky era. I think it's going to be the best Bears offense that we've seen in quite some time. And yeah, it looks like DeAndre Swift should be the starting running back. Of course, we'll talk about what this means in our guy Roshan, Hook 'em Horns, in tomorrow's video. But going over to what we have in Green Bay. This came from left field. The Packers are signing Josh Jacobs, and they're releasing Aaron Jones. Now, the winner for this is so clearly Josh Jacobs, and this is the free agent running back, maybe outside of Squan Barkley, that you should be most excited about. Josh Jacobs is the youngest of all these free agent running backs, where he will be 26 years old this next season. Josh Jacobs is coming off one of the better years. If you look at his age 25 season and compare that to everybody that we've had since the year 2000 and their 25-year-old seasons, you had Zeke in 2020, Todd Gurley in 2019, Devonta Freeman 2017, Latavius Murray 2015, Darren McFadden 2012, Marion Barber, Anthony Thomas, Warwick Dunn, and James Allen. If you're looking at the expected range of outcomes here, you're looking at about like 12, 13, 14 points per game for Josh Jacobs on average going into his age 26 season. And if you look at the situation in Green Bay, should be much better than what you had in Las Vegas. I mean, at least the offense is going to be a lot better. It's a much better coaching staff. Jordan Love looks great as well. I mean, if they're releasing Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon's a free agent, maybe A.J. Dillon's signed by the time you watch this video. But I mean, if Josh Jacobs is the standalone workhorse back, still pretty damn young, and one of the better offenses in the NFL with one of the better coaching staffs in the NFL, I'd be super, super excited. And then our next thing that we are going to talk about, not a big deal. Antonio Gibson signs with the Pats. I mean, maybe we can say, okay, well, if you're Gibson, you have a shot at being this. No, he doesn't have a shot at being started. He'll probably be in a committee with Ramondre Stevenson. This coaching staff has no allegiance to Ramondre, though. So, I mean, it's not like we can say, oh, Ramondre Stevenson's a more talented running back than Antonio Gibson. Ramondre definitely is going to have every single touch here. Don't worry about Gibson. Does muddy things up just a bit. Probably a committee where you're not necessarily super excited about anybody right now. But from a fantasy football perspective, I think these are going to be the major signings that we've had so far. Of course, I'll update y'all tomorrow, and we will go through and talk about all the losers from this and what to do with guys like Tajay Spears, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that should be it. I really appreciate you. Really hope that you have a great day. Send up a prayer that Trey Lance is a Minnesota Viking. And yeah, if you want our Dynasty rankings, we'll get those updated for y'all ASAP. Find that on flogfantasy.com. Not only all my Dynasty rankings, all the Dynasty rankings of all your favorite creators, plus all the premium content, Dynasty Trade Count, Dynasty Trade Finder, the whole 9 yards. Promo code FLOCK, 30% off any sub, and I'll make a team podcast breaking down your team for you. Thank you again. Appreciate you, and hope we get to see you out with the video tomorrow.